Hey, this is Derek Whatley. In this video, we'll take a look at how you can enable app migrations from OpenShift 3.11 to 4.1 by installing the OpenShift App Migration Toolset. We'll use the migration operator, also known as MIG operator, to install the app migration tools onto each of our clusters. In OpenShift 4.1, we can use OperatorHub to install this. To start out with, we're going to go to the OperatorHub section of the OpenShift 4.1 console. And from the OpenShift 4.1 console, we're going to take a look at the available operators. We're searching for one called Migration Operator, and we can see that no results were found. So we'll head to the Fuser MIG Operator repository on GitHub, and we'll install a new operator source that will provide the migration operator for us. In the bottom tmux pane, I'm logged into my OpenShift 4.1 cluster, and when I create this operator source, the marketplace will start to go and see what's available from that source that we've described, and it will load the operators into the web UI. So we can see now that the marketplace has responded to our new operator source, and when we reload OperatorHub, we're able to search for the migration operator once again, and this time we're able to actually find it, and we'll be able to install it. So there it is, and we can click install to start loading this into our cluster. What we're actually doing here is creating a subscription to the migration operator, and we need to create that subscription inside of a namespace. So we'll put it inside of the namespace OpenShift-migration, which I've just created on my OpenShift 4.1 cluster. It'll take a few moments to install. Once it does install, we can go to the overview for the operator, and we can go to Create Migration Controller. Migration Controller is a custom resource that describes to the operator which components of the migration toolset we want to install. In this case, we're going to install the controller, the UI, and Valero, and we're going to set the snapshot tag to HTTP3 to get the beta images for each of these components. We can see the pods come up a few moments later, started by the operator, and we can verify that the pods are starting by looking at the command line of the 4.0 cluster in the bottom tmux pane here. So after we've verified that all the pods have started, we can get the route to the web UI that's been installed by the operator, and we can go check that out in our browser. When we launch into this web UI for the first time, we'll be redirected to a page that will ask us to go accept the self-signed certificate for our cluster. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll proceed to that API endpoint. This is necessary because the UI is going to talk to the Kubernetes API for us. And now we're loaded into the web UI, and this is what you'll see when you're using the migration tool. You'll see that it has preloaded in our host cluster where we've installed the operator. That's our 4 cluster, and we want to migrate some applications over from the OpenShift 3 cluster. So we're going to add that cluster through the web UI. And before we actually go and click the Add Cluster button that's in the web UI, we need to edit the CORS allowed origin setting on the master configuration for the OpenShift 3 cluster. This is automatically set up for the OpenShift 4 cluster, but for OpenShift 3 we have to get it the master config on each node to include an entry under the CORS allowed origin section that will point at our web UI's URL so that the API server knows it's okay to accept requests that are coming from this location. So we edit that, add the entry, and then we need to run the restart command. And this is documented in the migration operator usage guide, so check that out for specifics. So now I've logged back out of the master for the 3 cluster, and I'm going to go ahead and deploy the operator onto the 3 cluster as well. We did this in OpenShift 4 through OperatorHub, but because there is no OperatorHub on OpenShift 3, we just used the operator.yaml file. So now we can see that the operator is running on our 3 cluster. And we're going to create the controller.yaml for this one. So controller3.yaml has presets for running on OpenShift 3. In this case, we're not going to deploy the controller or the UI, and we are going to deploy Valero because that's needed on any cluster involved in a migration of apps. So we create that, and then we can watch the pods on this 3.11 cluster and see that soon the Valero and Restic pods will start up in response to our CR. And in order to load this 3.11 cluster completely into the web UI, we'll go ahead and get the service account token that's been created by the operator for us. And we'll then use that, we'll copy it, we'll click Add Cluster in that web UI on the 4 side, and we'll call this cluster cluster-311. For the URL, we're going to need to grab that from OC status. So we're going to do OC status and grep for the server endpoint, and we just copy paste that whole thing in and click add cluster. Once this validates successfully, we'll be able to start running some migrations between our 311 and our 4 cluster to move apps between the two.